what has been doing over the years in terms of supporting leadership and capacity development. Allow me to share my screen. On my side, it is disabled. So if you can give me the right for sharing, I would appreciate it. Tell Sabina that I don't have the right. Yes, sorry for the interruption. I think I don't have the rights for sharing my presentation.
Okay, our tech gurus at the back. Is this something we can fix in a minute, or should we move on with the order of the day and come back to Dr. Michelle?
Recording in progress.
Proceed. Okay, so we will proceed and get back to Dr. Michelle once this is handled. Esteemed panelists, ladies and gentlemen, once again, my name is Aisha Hadija, and I am a fellow for the Gender Responsive Agricultural Policy Systems. And my policy innovation project is titled Enhancing Institutional Capacity for an Inclusive Food System in Nigeria, using Adamawa State as a pilot study. Nigeria is one of the few countries in the world that actually has a gender policy in agriculture. And this creates a platform for us to be able to design in this sector where women are essentially the backbone. But unfortunately, implementation on the ground is very poor, especially when we get to the subnational level. Welcome, ma'am. A few years ago, analysis has been done on the implementation of the policy, and what we have found out is that this policy is yet to achieve any of its objectives on the ground. And this is because a lot of the women that it has been designed for do not know about the policy, they don't understand the considerations that are in the policy, and some of our policy makers are still not incorporating these policy considerations into program design. So my policy intervention is that using Adamawa State as a pilot, we would conduct analysis together with the policymakers within that state, and then conduct a training session, capacity building session on the national gender policy in agriculture. So capacity build policymakers on how to conduct gender analysis on policies, how to design, and then also identify gender responsive strategies to be able to include not only in agriculture policies, but in agriculture adjacent policies as well. The sustainability aspect of this is to understand that it doesn't stop at Adamawa State, to cascade this gender analysis skills and knowledge that they now have to other states, so that we have a network of gender transformative champions that are able to look at any policy, whether it is from the agriculture sector, nutrition sector, or digitization sector, to say, we have gender considerations that you are not putting together. We would like to be involved and fix in A, B, and C so that we can have better policies in Nigeria. Thank you very much. The second fellow we have online is Ms. Olamide Mwanze, Senior Research Associate, also Gender Specialist at the International Institute for Tropical Agriculture. Please welcome.
Thank you very much. And I stand on the existing protocol. Greetings to you all. I am Olamide Nwanzi, and I'm delighted to be here to present my policy innovation project titled Gender Responsive and Transformative Review of the Cassava Seed Entrepreneur Eligibility and Accreditation Policy Guideline in Nigeria. So, certified seed is a vital basic input which determines crop yield and also contributes to food security. The sales of certified seeds generate income and also contributes to poverty reduction. Certified seed also strengthens the resilience of farmers to climate change and other forms of stresses. However, gender-focused research shows that there is gender differentials and gender gap in the sourcing, access, and use of certified seed among farmers, especially among women farmers and migrant farmers. In Nigeria, there is the National Agricultural Seed Policy. An updated and revised version of this policy was published in 2022, and one of its key focus is on the decentralization of certified seed among rural farmers across rural communities in Nigeria using two pathways. Number one is the outgrower scheme, and number two is the community seed producer initiative, a laudable initiative which is built on collaborative and strategic partnership with rural farmers across rural community in Nigeria. For my project, my policy innovation project, I conducted the following. Number one, I conducted a narrative review of the eligibility criteria and the accreditation guideline used to certify cassava seed entrepreneur. Secondly, I used the gender in agricultural policy assessment tool to analyze the National Agricultural Seed Policy to highlight opportunities and aspects where gender-responsive policy solutions and actions can be mainstreamed. Currently, I am conducting a qualitative study. Based on my review, I identified 3 gender-based constraints. Number one is the minimum land size requirement of 2 hectares to certify cassava seed entrepreneur. This criteria is gender blind and did not consider issues around women land ownership, migrant land ownership, biased inheritance laws, and other social harmful norms. The second constraint is the financial capital requirement, and the third is the rigorous inspection. These criteria disadvantage and limit women farmers' participation, migrant farmer participation as cassava seed entrepreneur. The GAPO analysis of the National Agricultural Seed Policy revealed that the policy considered 5 gender assessment indicators out of 15 gender assessment indicators. So based on my review and analysis, I would like to make the preliminary recommendation. Number one is to develop and incorporate and use simple mandatory tools that help to identify, involve, and include more women farmers, migrant farmers, differently abled persons, and other marginalized groups as beneficiary of the Cassava Seed Entrepreneur Initiative. The second recommendation is to use less strict eligibility criteria that consider women's land ownership issues and women's timely use because of their gender roles. And thirdly is the use of gender-sensitive language when formulating new policies. This should be seen as part of best practice. All I am saying is that with a gender-responsive and inclusive National Agricultural Seed Policy, we can collaboratively ensure that certified seed, particularly certified cassava improved varieties, reach, benefit, empower not only men, but women farmers, migrant farmers, differently abled persons as beneficiary of this initiative. And most importantly, marginalized group whose livelihood depend on cassava. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Indeed, the seed system is part of the general system that needs to be fixed before we can have food and nutrition security. Third fellow is Dr. Patricia Ukegbu, Associate Professor, Michael Okpara University of Agriculture, Umudike.
Thank you, everybody, and good afternoon. I am Patricia Ukegbu, and my policy innovation project is on integrating gender-responsive adolescent nutrition considerations into the national policy on food and nutrition in Nigeria. We know that adequate nutrition is a prerequisite for human growth and development, and it is also 19 years, and it's been shown that in the national policy on food and nutrition, the problem to the exclusion of adolescents, especially continue to exacerbate is data, nutrition activities, and literature documents to identify the gender gaps. And I've done documents to identify the gender gaps. And I've done key information in terms of our policies, because I use the GAPO tool, that is the gender in agriculture, is the gender in agricultural policy research tool. I use the agricultural policy research tool. I use the issues. And for the key informants interviews I had, I found out that they agree, there was a consensus that the issue of adolescent nutrition to apply a gender lens when designing or implementing policies around adolescent issues. They also recommended that we should have age and gender disaggregated data in order for us to actually know where the problem lies. And then they also recommended that the adolescents should be involved in issues that concern them. And based on this, I would end with the words of Kofi Annan, which says that without data, we are flying blind. And if we cannot see it, then we cannot feel it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Patricia. Indeed, adolescents are slowly becoming the hidden middle. They are not children, so it's not child nutrition, and they are not adults, so it's not adult nutrition, but adolescent nutrition. The next fellow is Ms. Rashida Toinola, Assistant Chief Land Resource Officer, Federal Ministry of Agric and Food Security.
Good afternoon, all. Achievable in Nigeria. So that's why I have to go to integration of post-gender, responsible of post-harvesting of horticultural crop into the national agricultural sector, food security and nutrition. Post-harvesting loss have become major global issue. That is not that we are having problem of production. Production just carry 1% of what we produce, but the remaining aspect is post-harvesting, which government doesn't really take into consideration, but government is saying that we want food security, we want food security. But how are we going to achieve that? When we don't take aspects that are very important, I believe that we can't even get food security without putting into consideration of post-harvesting loss, food waste, and food loss and food waste. Another thing is that we're talking of food security. We are not putting in consideration people that are into that production, women, youth, vulnerable groups. We don't take that into consideration. We just believe that, no, we can get food security, let's just achieve it, which I don't. And thirdly, farmers are shouting, we are having it, but we don't have the skill. We don't have the technologies. Technically, how we are going to do it. They don't have, even policy that is going to back it up, they don't really have it. So how are we going to go about this? So that's why I have the interest in doing that, which with what I was able to go, like, I have some activity that I put together that I want to do, like, because when you want to prove something, you have to get facts. So I have to get, okay, DEX review. Let me know, maybe policy we have, even you entails horticulture, post-harvesting of horticultural loss. And another thing, okay, when I get that, I have to do an analysis. So for my research, I'm going to use secondary source of data and primary source of data. So from what I've done so far, I've done the secondary data generation, which I try to make of like 4 policy in Nigeria. I make use of National Agricultural Gender Policy of Agriculture. I make use of National Nutrition Policy in Nigeria, and I make use of APP, which is the Agricultural Promotion Policy, which the last one that is even in view, which I believe in view for us, which is the National Agricultural Sector Promotion, National Agriculture Sector Food Security and Nutrition Policy, which is in view from help us to put into the next policy. So when I did it, when I started all those 4 documents, important documents, I realized that there's gender gap, there's gender blind. We're talking we want to move for security, but what is important we are not doing about it. We are not doing anything about it. According to you said due to post-harvesting loss. What are we doing? For instance, all of us were in Nigeria. Like 2 months ago, we all know that when we went to market, you can see how carrot now you can going to see at rate of 24,000, 30,000 naira. But in next, which are very important in nutrition and very cheap to get our balance diet. To technology, I've done that. So by doing that, I believe I've already got my secondary data finding. So in order to be able to put myself again, I'm thinking I have to get quality increase. There's going to be increase in the economy of the nation. So I believe that with help of stakeholders, I will help do that.
Thank you very much. And the final fellow in this segment is Ms. Lillian Treasure, lecturer, Michael Okpara University of Agriculture, who is with us.
Project is titled. We are all aware of the issues. Today, most farmers, both women and women, they use grains rather than seeds, and that has affected output drastically. So I don't know how this issue of hybrid
is very wonderful listening to the toys line, because I'm from National Agricultural Council. Whatever technology, whatever research that you're doing, everything is still on the seed. I'm so delighted at what you're doing with the VSCs. That's what we call them, the cassava. We have a gender lens to whatever is structural balance that we have. So they are there and they are doing well. Most of them are internationally renowned, foreign trained, and the men are more interested in going out to the field. So naturally, there is always that balance. And then there are some female also that prefers to be on the field. They're in Zaria, they're in Kaduna, they're in Ibadan, they're everywhere, and they're making us proud. So from our side at the NACS, we don't have any issues like that. But during your presentation, I heard about some issues that has to do with access to land. There are so many stringent measures that we need to take back and look at. And I'm happy that I'm hearing them now. And one of the reasons why we're here is to also hear what is happening on the field and take them back and see what can be done. You've made very wonderful observations, which I think would further help you in your work. And I'm so delighted to hear that. Also, I've also heard with very interesting comment from Rashidat Oyinlola, who also talked about evidence-based data. It's very, very important that whatever it is that we are discussing, we are not just discussing, just like you said, people are talking about GMOs, people are talking about hybrid, people are talking about all these things. But then we as researchers, we don't just discuss, join the bandwagon, just discuss generally. We try to be evidence-based in whatever it is that we are discussing. So generally, I've heard so very wonderful work that you guys are doing, and I just want to say kudos to you. Thank you for now.
Thank you very much, presenters, my fellow analysts. This is very, very interesting because I'm from the Federal Ministry of Agric, and for me, as a lady, actually head the climate change desk for the ministry. So you should know that I will be very, very much interested when it comes to issue of gender. speaking on the issue of that yes, we actually highlighted some of the challenges that are being faced by gender. When we say gender here, we are mostly referring to issue of women. Because women are, they are affected differently when you're looking at issue of climate change. In that policy document, we discussed different issues. Is it on issue of access to information? Is it issues of access to inputs? Is it access to issue of land? Land, anywhere you go to when it comes to issue of gender, you find out that land is a very serious issue. So there must be a deliberate, let me use that word, is a deliberate attempt to at least retweak that aspect when it comes to issue of gender, so that it will not just fall into one other aspect while another place is actually suffering. When you look at, let me just go to a very short story, though I don't like recurring this issue. I think in 2018, I went out for an assessment after flood. And I noticed that I found myself in Kogi. So people that can really understand what I'm talking about, when you go to Kogi State, when it comes to issue of flooding, you find that a lot of communities were cut off. A lot of produce were decaying, which Rashida talked about, issue of post-harvest losses. A lot of things were happening within those communities that were cut off. We had to use boats to get to those communities. But the most pathetic aspect of it is, it was the women that were mostly left behind in those communities. The men, some of the men were nowhere to be found. Very few men were left to stay with those women just to protect them. But you find those women could not run. Their kids are there. Where are they going to start from? So in such a situation, when it comes to issue of climate change, since I've been on that desk, is a deliberate. I do it deliberately because I've been to the field. I know where the shoe pinches. So, and I know that, yes, there's a way we're supposed to go for us to move forward. So bringing out all these facts, and I'm not looking at issue of bringing out data. We want disaggregated data. This will be able to show to show the true picture of what is happening out there, not where you lump up a lot of things. So, and I'm glad a lot of women communities, women organizations are coming up. They are saying that we don't want lump up data. We want disaggregated data, including the vulnerable groups. And this will help a great deal in showing a lot of, to bring up a lot of things that are happening on the field. So I think you people have done really well, and I implore you that, yes, you should just put more effort. And most of the times that some of these policies are being reviewed, we don't review only at the national level. We go to sub-nationals. We go to zonal sectors and all those. It's not, the policy does not just stay at the federal alone. So I will employ that whenever those policies are being reviewed, you people should come out, speak, so you can be part of those to help review and increase awareness on issue of gender. This will help it will help a lot of people to understand that there's a problem in that aspect. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. A take from what I've had thus far is that all their topics, all their projects are looking at how they can reduce disparity among the gender, among and within gender. And you can see that policy is central to achieving this. Whether we are looking at post-harvest or we are looking at data and things like that, I think policy is strategic and it's critical. When you're talking about post-harvest losses, I wouldn't know whether you are also looking at the impact of technology, or you're looking at technology from the gender perspective in terms of using the gender lens to look at the technology that can be used for to reduce post-harvest losses. And for all the projects, I'm sure you'll be looking at the access, the roles that gender play. When you talk about access to resources and things like that, and how this can also help to improve. We've talked about gender disaggregated data. Policies cannot be, effective policy cannot really be done without data. So we need data that will support all these things that we are doing. I want to say that if all these projects come to fruition, we are really going to be addressing the issue of gender disparity. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Patricia Oyaga. I'm here representing the Senator FC team. I really honestly wish she was here because this summit and this side program is one of her, should I say, baby project or her core project. She's very passionate about it. So I'll try to do justice to the views that I know she would like to share and the feedback she would like to get from everyone here in the room. Without wasting time, I'm going to address the policies because that is our sector, the laws and how it affects the people on the field. I like what you said about, because I realized I was here like a day ago, and I was in another conversation that had to do with gender-based violence and things like that. I realized that at the end of the day, it doesn't get to the grassroots. The people don't know their rights with respect to the policies that have been put out there. There are enough, if you go on Google, there are a lot of policies, a lot of legal laws that are out there, implementation of it, or at least getting feedback from them. Don't forget, we live in a system where culture plays an important role, culture and religion. So what I would like to, going forward as you do your deliberations and work on your project, be very mindful to give feedbacks in this regard. Because at the end of the day, I am here, we are all here in Abuja. The people we are talking about are in the farms, they're not here. So we need to find a way to get it back to them and also hear what their problems are and how to fix it. We can speak all the big grammar here. If it doesn't affect them back home and where it matters, we have wasted our time. So I would really, really encourage as you do your deliberations, and please, our office is open. My madam is committee chairman on women affairs, so Agric is part of that. We are very open to feedback. We want to know, how can we help? How do we help you implement the policies in place? Is there any other policy that is there that is not working? Why is it not working? Can you give us more feedback? Can you tell us what we should do and how we should do what we need to do? Or at least give us your feedback. We'll sit on the table, have a conversation like this, more dialogue, and see how we can better, fix this thing. Even just here, while we're here, this guy brought mics. He only gave it to the men. So these are the issues. I'm serious. These are the issues. One day we went for a gender-based violence walk, and the men were pushing the women that we are talking about the violence against. So sometimes, we need to be very, very intentional, like she said, very intentional about how we really impact and what we are doing. It starts from us. It is not government. It is me and you. It is the man that shared mic. It is us. So please, as we go through these deliberations and more talks, my office, my madam's office, is very, very interested in feedback. We are interested in what the implementations issues are. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And the beautiful thing about this panel is that we have representation from the research sector, from policymakers, from financial inclusion experts, the legislature, and regulatory organization. What we are offering here is experts with knowledge. NASC, if that guideline needs reviewing so that it is no longer gender blind, we have an expert here that would work with you to do this free. Yeah. Thank you. FMAD, if there is a policy that needs to be, ActionAid is also here, who have been doing very good work, and there's a policy fellow here. So what we are offering is not a give, take situation. We're giving and we're taking. Thank you for opening your doors to us. You will be hearing from us, but also we would like to hear from you. We are ready and we are very able and capable to be able to push through with these reforms. That is what we want for Nigeria's food and security sector, reforms. On that note, is Dr. Michelle online? Dr. Michelle, she's no longer online. So that Dr. Margaret is online at the closing remarks. Okay, thank you. So technology has failed us, but no worries. We would forge ahead. So now we move on to the second segment, and I urge you, please stay on our panel of experts, and we hear from the next round of policy fellows. We have, the floor would like to say something. I was keeping the floor engagement until the end, but I can take two. I can take two. And let the record show I am handing over the mic to a lady.
Thank you very much, moderator, and I want to align myself with the already established protocol. I'm Dr. Zainab Muhammad Idris Waru. I happen to be also someone that has been working on the nutrition landscape. I'm also the national president-elect of our Medical Women Association of Nigeria. I'm here to actually listen to this conversation and some of the key issues I'm meeting, especially given the policy innovation that these fellows have presented to us around agriculture, nutrition, and various other issues that have been presented so far. I didn't hear any mention of the current insecurity that has added an additional layer of challenges that we're facing, especially that also contributes to the disempowerment of our women folk, especially the women, where food crisis and our food systems are being challenged. I also, from the second presenter, I think Deborah Olaosebikan, where she mentioned the issue of the certification policy guideline, where 2 hectares of land needs to be available before they're able to really access some of these facilities. I want to, I don't know, I think we should be practical in some of our recommendations. People may not have the land, even if they wish or they want to really partake in that initiative. What are we doing with our homestead gardens? How do we encourage the women to start small scale, and then perhaps as they grow, they can now even buy those lands themselves? On here, I think it's important if we can have a framework that brings together all of these things, whether you're talking about agriculture, because I know if you look at the health sector, for instance, there are a number of nutrition specific interventions that are currently ongoing that affect women and then that are focused on promoting the interests of the underserved. We say underserved with opportunities that exist out there and how much of that they have to be able to contribute. And I know that in the agri-sector, for instance, we have the agri-sector strategy for achieving to push out there. I know some states have domesticated, like Kaduna. So we need to see how these policies are translated into action. I have a lot to say, but I think I'll stop here so that I allow other people to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zainab, for that intervention.
I want to commend the research fellows. And like Lillian mentioned, ActionAid is very interested in the national gender policy in agriculture. And ActionAid is chairing the committee on the implementation of the national gender policy in agriculture. It's open for collaborations. If there are innovations coming out from all your research documents, just like we're already working with Lillian. She mentioned about the validation and meeting that happened in Lagos, and it was done in collaboration with the also push for the implementations to address the gender gaps that exist and gender-based violence that exists within the agri systems. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have noticed the hand, and I'll come back to you, ma'am. Thank you very much, and we are garnering partnerships and support as we go along. ActionAid and the National Gender Steering Committee is opening their doors to us for collaboration. Thank you very much. We have the Honorable Senator Ireti Kingibe's door open, and also NASC will be hearing from us on that 2 hectares. Thank you very much. So we would quickly like to, if you would, still remain on the panel, move on to the next fellow, who is Dr. Temitayo Adenike Adeyemo, lecturer, University of Ibadan. But as we do that, we would also welcome another member.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for the promises of support. I'm moving to the aquaculture sector right away, and I'm looking at how a sustainable food systems can be developed in Nigeria through an inclusive aquaculture sector. You know, the sector has great potential for growth, providing employment, income, and even being able to meet the protein adequacy of the country. But thus far, there have still been shortfalls in that sector. And then what could be the reasons? Some of the reasons could be the gap, the gender constraint that has limited labor productivity of all actors. So my PIP intended to look at a way of mainstreaming gender in the aquaculture sector. The approaches are to engage a policy analysis of relevant policies. So I looked at the National Aquaculture Strategy of 2008, that's the latest strategy, and the National Gender Policy in Agriculture, which encompassed many other sectors in the economy. Of course, the analysis showed that the National Aquaculture Strategy is gender blind. And the National Gender Policy in Agriculture is, just made mainly perfunctory mention of the aquaculture sector, not really mainstreaming aquaculture in it. And so this is seen in the extent of participation, opportunities, and benefits of gendered groups in the aquaculture sector. So looking at the National Integrated Survey on Agriculture, we had only about 2% of the whole farming community in aquaculture. And we see mainly adult males and young males, in production and processing. And the women most likely in retailing, not even wholesale marketing. Of course, this will show in the kind of revenues they have. And so we see where policy gaps have come to show in the kind of constraint, the kind of opportunities that people can have within the sector. So what's next? How do we have a sustainable system using one of the key sectors, one of the growing sectors with potential, the aquaculture sector? I intend to carry out a multi-stakeholder engagement with policymakers, the people at the grassroots, the actors themselves, researchers, and see what are the feasible pathways through which gender can be mainstreamed in the agriculture sector. What is the rationale for this? The rationale is that there is ongoing talk with the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security, the World Fish and International Food Policy Research Institute, IFPRI, on redesigning a new aquaculture strategy. So this is an opportunity to see how gender mainstreaming indicators can fit into this design. And so I think it's an opportunity that we can take and have a multi-stakeholder engagement for that. Furthermore, I'd like to show that women can be as competitive as men. Young people can be as competitive as adults in the aquaculture sector along the nodes. So I want to look at a policy analysis matrix showing competitiveness and efficiency along the chain and across gendered groups, and then the effect, divergences, which will show the effects of government, whether they have been overtaxed, whether they've been too subsidized, whether one group needs to move resources to another group. And then finally, to have a final, concluding stakeholder engagement that will now bring in commitment of key stakeholders to say, okay, we see these pathways that have been developed. We see these gaps. We can develop an agenda to redesign the policy and ensure that the aquaculture strategy being developed and many other strategies or programs, within the aquaculture sector is gender mainstreamed and inclusive of everybody, not just women, men, young and old, so we can have a more sustainable food system. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Temitayo. And before we move on to the next fellow, I would like to invite Dr. Emeka Uwanaka, who is representing Mrs. Ifoma Anyau, head of the Gender Unit, Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security. So as you come up, I would also like to invite Dr. Sherifat Adegbison, Senior Lecturer, Edo State College of Agriculture and Natural Resources.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. As I'm rightly introduced, I'm Dr. Sherifat Adegbison from Edo State College of Agriculture and Natural Resources. I won't be bothering you more, because my colleague here has spoken more of what I'm also putting in the pipeline. So the title of my PIP is Advancing Gender Inclusivity and Sustainability of the Fisheries and Aquaculture Value Chain. My pilot study is in Edo State. But then, like I said, my colleague has said it all. The sector is really doing well in terms of the food security, economic growth. But then there are some challenges that is still hindering the sustainability of the sector. So my PIP aims to address these challenges, looking at the evidence-based data, conducting a self-desirable data to really see the roles and involvement of men and women in these evaluations. Then also, I'll be using a lot of awareness and advocacy. But over time, we'll find out that this particular sector is being dominated by men. Although there are women in some of these valuations, but then they are there, but they don't have access to resources, benefits, that they should benefit in this sector. So my PIP aims to look at the gender disparities, look at evidence data to inform decisions, and also a powerful awareness and advocacy with the stakeholders in order to propose measures to empower women. So my implementation strategies, there are just 5. I'll be conducting a fisheries and aquaculture value chain analysis to look at the roles and involvement of men and women. We cannot just come up with these particular policies without looking at what men does, what a man does, what women do in this value chain. So that will help us to make an informed decision when making the policy. So apart from that, I'll also be doing a policy content and look at some of these policies in the aquatic food system. When we talk about the aquatic food system, we'll talk about the fisheries and aquaculture value chains. Then I'll also engage in validation workshops to discuss with key partners, stakeholders in this sector on measures to improve and promote this sector. Then also, apart from that, I'll also be conducting a policy dialogue to see for gender considerations and measures to propose intervention in order to increase participation of women in this valuation. Out of these 5 implementation plans, 2 have already been concluded, and they are the value chain analysis. Looking at the Edo State as a pilot study, I've been able to realize that 4 value chains in the aquaculture sector, that is the fingerlings production, the table size production, the sales and marketing of fish, then fish processing. Out of these value chains, most of them, especially the fingerlings production and table size production, are being dominated by men. And when we look at the fish processing and the sales of marketing of fish, you all agree with me, we have our women there. But then when they do it, they don't have access to resources that would actually improve them in this value chain. Then apart from that, like I said, I have 2. The other one is the policy content analysis. So I was able to use 2 policy tools. They are the WeAreGov tool developed by IFPRI, that's the International Institute of Fish Policy Research Institute, and also GAPO, which is being developed by Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations. So using these policy tools, I've been able to analyze 4 policy documents, which are the National Agricultural Strategy, the Inland Fisheries Act, the Edo State Fisheries Law, and some agricultural study. But then the result I got was that some of these policies do not even consider gender at all. There is nothing like gender in some of these policies, so they are really gender blind. So from these results, the conclusions I'll be bringing from, I brought from that are the gender disparity in the fisheries and aquaculture value chains, and also lack of evidence-based data to inform decision. So my recommendations for this PIP is number one, to bring measures in empowerment of women through capacity building, promoting and giving access, for them to have access to benefits and resources in these value chains. And also, a powerful awareness and advocacy method has to be done to help inform decisions and making gender consideration into some of these fisheries and aquaculture policies. So thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much. Fisheries and aquaculture, you mentioned that, and this is a recurring theme. Women have inadequate access to resources, and one of those key resources is actually credit. So for that, our next speaker, Mrs. Vera Onyeka Oyinlo, is going to speak to us. She is the Knowledge Management, Communications and Policy Advisor at the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to be here, and we say thank you for being with us. Yeah, my policy innovation project is looking at improving access to credit for small-scale women farmers to boost food system transformation in Nigeria. Why am I interested in this? It's because during my research, I discovered that 65 to 70% of women contribute to food production in Nigeria, and they lack access to finance, particularly credit, to be able to improve and grow their businesses. They would want to expand, like for those doing like 1 hectare of land or farm, would want to go to 2 or 3 or 4, or even go into the value chains, but they don't have access to credit. And so I got motivated, and thanks to our award, my capacity was built to be able to analyze some of these challenges. So for the methodology that I'm using for my policy innovation project is the Gender in Agricultural Policy Analysis Tool, which is the GAPO tool developed by FAO. And I use that to review the Nigerian Agricultural Technology and Innovation Policy, which is the current policy being promoted by the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security from 2022 to 2027. So when I reviewed that policy, I saw that there is a new agricultural development fund that has been established. But I know a lot of people are not really aware about this. And the fund was established by an act of law, an act of legislature, and it has, started and yet to be operational as we speak, though their offices is available at, they are now located at Bank of Agriculture. So now, I looked at it and said, okay, we've had different credit schemes in the past. And during my analysis, I looked at that. I saw that there's a Nigerian Credit Agricultural Scheme Guarantee, which the government promoted from 2012 to 2016. And during the analysis, the key findings I found was that 70% of men, those that accessed the fund, were men, while 30% were for women. So now for the NADF, this is a deliberate opportunity. This is an opportunity for it to be gender responsive. And that is why I am advocating that for this new fund that is available now, we should create awareness so that people will be aware there is actually the NADF. And also at least 40% of the fund is reserved for women, because women have a lot of barriers accessing credit. So there have to be deliberate affirmative action for women actually to be able to access this fund. And if we look at it in the past, even like the NISA, even the former medium and small scale medium enterprise development fund that was promoted by CBN, it was the men that really had access until we started doing advocacy for the fund to have at least 60% for women to be able to access the fund. So for my going forward for the implementation of my PIP, I've mapped out the relevant stakeholders, and I'm happy that all the stakeholders in the room are actually my critical stakeholders, and I'll be reaching out to you to continue the implementation, particularly for the Senate Committee Chair on Women Affairs. This fund is an act of legislature, and in the policy document, there was no, desegregation in terms of how women or even gender consideration in that document. Actually, no gender consideration to see how the women can even assess. So it was just there to say we've established a fund, and there was nothing to say, okay, we'll have some special consideration for these women. So maybe our message back to the Senate Committee Chair is something that we would like you to look into, because it's a policy document, and then to see how the new fund can actually help women. There will be a lot of partnership going forward and collaborating with stakeholders to see, particularly awareness. People need to know. The women need to be given voice. They need to have a voice. How will the fund be administered? You know, so I'm looking forward to working with a lot of partners and collaborators to see how we can ensure that women have access to credit. And aside from the NFDF as well, I'll also be looking at the agri-sector reform to see what we can do to help women. There are other catalytic mechanisms, financing mechanisms that we can also look at, you know, working with the private sector to see how this can be mainstreamed in terms of access to credit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Indeed, we do have a National Agricultural Development Fund. It's not a women's development fund, but perhaps we do need one. Who knows? Our final speaker, Dr. Chinwoke Clara Ifeanyi, Senior Lecturer, University of Port Harcourt. Thank you. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here with us. I want to start my presentation with a question. How many of us know that Nigeria is a climate hotspot? You are aware? Thank you very much. I am working on a project enhancing climate resilient agriculture and gender responsiveness in Nigeria through the utilization of G-Smart Monitor. Climate change is no longer news, and I am happy you have just confirmed it. And Nigeria is one of the climate hotspot countries. But for us in Nigeria, it's more critical because, you know, in the country, majority of our agricultural activities are still heavily reliant on weather signals. The level of mechanization is still very low. If we look at the new policy, the agricultural policy, the NATIP, you see the percentage of mechanization in Nigeria is still 0.027 against FAO recommendation of 1.5. So you see that we are still very far. So that makes it very critical and very important for the agricultural sector to take cognizance of climate change in any project or intervention that we are forming. I want to tell you this afternoon that if you're planning or implementing any project in the agricultural sector, and a little change in rainfall pattern can ruin all your effort. So it's a very critical area in agriculture. There must be supportive policies. And all of us in this room, the problem is in implementation. Thank you. You just said that. The problem we have is where implementation. These policies, are they being implemented? Most times when we listen to of successful implementation, but we go to the other divide of the room, those as the grassroots, the room. I work with over 420 rural women from southern Nigeria. We trained over 5,000 of them on innovative climate practices. Out of these 420 key women leaders we work with, but the gender policy is beginning to be reviewed, and these people are not aware. So that is the background to the project I am doing. I am developing a framework, a gender-smart framework that we can use to assess the implementation of gender components contained in the existing agricultural policies. We have already started. Currently, we have done 2 activities out of the 5 that we have. We have reviewed some policies, and that was done in collaboration with 3 countries, Malawi, and do not give women priority at the same result. Next, we are going into the field survey, after which to see that it's very inclusive. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And next, I would like to acknowledge the presence of our online participants who have been dropping comments and questions. So if we can have it on the screen, if not, I can get you a mic at the back so that we can get to some of these comments. Comments on the screen, and then I will come back to the panel, but I did promise to acknowledge.
Good afternoon. My name is Chineye Godson. I am the president of an NGO, ALPAC Foundation. In fact, agriculture is something I will encourage everybody to get into. In my life growing up, I didn't know anything about agric. In fact, we lived in the township. If my mom said, let's go to the farm, when we go to the village, I will form fever because I don't want to go. I'll start having very big fever. I didn't want it. I saw it as a very hectic thing, so I just let it be. I have a neighbor that have been encouraging me, have a space in your backyard, start something there. So I beg. And you know, people think that farming is for the poor, hungry farmer, poor farmer. They've been addressed like that, but not anymore. So I did something. I brought some boys and they did something for me at the backyard. We have harvested. If you see the joy I had, having some corn, this one is my own. I won't buy with money. I have okra, I have some things, I won't buy them with money. It gives happiness. So I'm now very interested in this, that we went for a training for sesame seeds. We've been empowered. They have given us some things. I want to start. Mom, I want to say something about the land. The first one I approached, I said, I want to start this sesame agric production. How do I do it? What about the land? The person says, 10 million for the land. You see? It's discouragement number one. I say, I just started. Are we doing as in FCT people? Mom, I'm talking to you about, to talk to our mommy, the FCT minister. And then what are you people doing about encouraging the persons that want to involve themselves in this agric is good. It's not about, let me do it. They said some persons that went for Hajj, the farmers brought 10 million, 20 million, 15 million. They even sponsored some persons. That is what my Muslim friend told me. What are you doing about the lands, ma? Somebody said, don't worry, I'm going to give you now so that you start the sesame plants and then the agric. What are you doing to help the persons? And then the second thing is about the money. You talked about the assessing. If you ask our men, please include the women. They will tell you you are dragging power. You want to get this and that. Please, what are we doing about that? Let's let our men include us in whatever they are doing. Thank you.
Thank you. And there is a hand over there. No, I saw this hand. It will come back.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is don't get angry if I pronounce it wrongly. She spoke about having young boys, young girls, and women in agriculture, precisely, and making it easy. Yeah? Yes, she made a statement towards the end. She was saying encouraging the young ones, both the boys and the girls, to come into agriculture. So before getting to the Polytechnic, my parents used to have a farm then where we go to work. I personally planted beans. I had this interest in wanting to see what I would yield out of it. But unfortunately, 2 weeks later, because I was mostly working in the tailor shop, I went back to check what I must have done, and it was all finished. Like, cows ate every single bit of it. So I sat on the ground and I started crying, I'm not coming again. My dad was like, it's going to happen. Then a few weeks later again, I went back to do it. I saw this headman coming in with their, and I got angry because normal, you vex me, I go vex for you. So I was very straightforward that I was angry. So my question is, what are you doing for security to these people that you're giving hands to go into agriculture? Because you may end up giving them this money or these products to do it, but after some days, it falls down. So what is your take on that?
Thank you very much. So we have quite a few questions, so straight to the question and then...
Okay.
Okay, thank you. My question is, first, how do we ensure that early warning climate information gets to the women in rural communities? I have so much interest in climate change and gender. And most of the women in the rural communities are not educated and get those information. Then the second question on the person that presented on GBV, my question would be, what are the specific GBV issues that you have identified within the agri sector? Because I heard you mention the generic GBV issues, but I believe that the agri sector would have specific GBV issues that need to be addressed under that policy. And then the third one is, for all the presenters, what are the gender indicators that you use in your assessment of these policies? Thank you.
Thank you very much. 3 questions and 1 question for Lillian online. So Lillian, if you can still hear us, there is one for you on the specific GBV considerations.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Omojo Isabella Ako. I'm a knowledge-based data, and I would really like to find out exactly the issues we have with getting correct data. Because for me, I work in the agricultural sector, and when we go to the field to get data, as simple as the name of the person sometimes is even a challenge for us. Because the first time you go, the lady tells you her name is Habiba Ako. The next time you go, she's telling you something else. And she's giving you another name. And you see, these are things that sometimes distort data. And when data is not correct, no matter the analysis you do on it, the result you get, it's not beneficial to anyone, no matter how good the decisions that are being made from that data is. So I would really love to know some of the little challenges that really that cause this data inconsistencies. And for the agricultural sector, we still have the challenge of having like a database of our farmers, irrespective of what value chain they are into or what enterprise they are into. And I want to use the example of the social cash transfer project in the country. So to a large extent, they've been able to mine and get data, have the database of people of their beneficiaries at the state governments and at the federal government. It's sad to say that we still do not have proper database, and it affects agricultural policies, it affects agricultural development.
Right, thank you very much. And if you need any more information regarding the PIPs, you can reach out to the fellows because we are all here. And I would also like to add that NADF, Agricultural Development Fund, is in the room, and it's an organization that's committed to the advancement of Nigeria's agriculture sector through the provision of financial resources, infrastructure support, and strategic partnerships. So we do have comments on the board from participants online while Lillian is getting ready. There was a hand.
Yeah.
There are a lot of hands. I have to do 3 hands because I also need to come back to the panel.
Good afternoon. I want to start by appreciating all the scholars, the researchers who have actually done so much in those areas. I want to advise on something. Between gender and social inclusion, there could be a connection, but going further, there is a gap. And I want to advise that if it is possible that among women, there are women that we need to pay special attention to. So maybe that could also be a question to whoever that is in position to answer the question. Women with disability who are in agriculture, what is it that you have for them? I've not heard anything about that. So let's look deep into that. Thank you.
Good afternoon all. My name is Patience Madi. I'm a farmer.
And I was actually sitting down and boiling my seat right before Hajia mentioned insecurity. Because I believe that this conversation cannot go beyond this room if insecurity is not tackled. If it's the policy, it's not in the policy. I'm a victim of this insecurity. I have a farm in Kaduna, over 100 hectares. I got like 500 crates of egg a day. But I've been displaced by insecurity. I'm having to find myself in Abuja. I'm not a city person, I'm a farmer. I'm having to find myself in Abuja and no compensation from anywhere. Nobody's asking questions as in, how do you move on? How do we relocate this farmers to a safer place? Or how do we provide solutions and security to these farms? We invested everything we had in the farm. The same insecurity took my husband because he was kidnapped and killed. And so I'm left with my children and having to be in a city. There's no farm in the city. And my farm cannot be accessed because even as last week, I was called that boys in the village were killed as well. This is a sequence and still going on where the kidnappers still come to the villages and kidnap about 10 people and give a list of what they want. And we have a government, and government is aware of this. So what are we doing to these women that are displaced? These women from us are in the IDP camp. What policies are they putting in place as a government to take care of these people? What they have lost? What insurance? Many of us are not insured, whether we like it or not. Farmers do not really do insurance on their farms. I'm educated, but unfortunately, I still do not have insurance on my farm. So imagine the local farmer, the smallholder farmer. So what these policies have to be, the insecurity and compensation has to be involved in the policies in terms of gender agricultural policy for gender based.
Thank you very much, ma'am, and our condolence to you.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Victor Habila, and I'm very happy with what the presentation that I've heard so far, and I'm particularly happy with the presentation on improving access to women, women having access to formal credit, women engaged in agriculture, and that's because in the last 3 to 4 years, I've been working supporting women engaged in agriculture across rural communities, particularly of Nasarawa State. And you see, while we're here enjoying the atmosphere here, we're enjoying the AC here, we're looking so cute, there are women who are working so hard every single day in rural communities that, they're going through a whole lot. They don't even enjoy what we enjoy, and they're battling with their husbands, they're battling with community leaders, a lot of bottlenecks, and they need so much support. I'm so glad to hear about that policy innovation that looks to supporting those women, creating platform for them to have access to formal credit. That is very, very important. That is very, very important. Before coming here, one thing I asked myself, why is it that we tend to focus more on women? But I can tell you right now with my full chest, I'm for women. Please, let's keep that up. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate your full chest. Thank you very much. Dr. Shinobola, I will come back to the floor. Dr. Shinobola, I want to start with you. Any remarks? Okay. As we are rounding up and closing, I am getting side-eye from the back.
Thank you very much. The first thing I want to say is that data collection, somebody make it better. I want to say that data collection is not cheap and it's very expensive. Another thing is that a lot of farmers don't have trust in the people that are collecting the data because they don't know what you want to use the data for. They are not sure whether the next moment you are coming with tax or something like that. But I know that there are some things that can be put in place for us to be able to get at least ahead of this. I know there are some countries that they have collaboration with communication industries that some people are given the opportunity to send data regularly. It was done sometimes ago when we were trying to monitor market prices that women in the marketplaces were given not bothered about
about how much they spend, because they know something has been taken care of, and they are sending information per second, per minute, per hour on current prices, and so it's getting to the back end, and people are getting that information. If you need data, you have to invest in data. And then just like the policy is critical and is very important. Something was mentioned the other time. There's a need for the awareness, but the awareness must also get to the grassroots. And so the language and the communication mechanism to get to the grassroots, we need to look at them again and again. And so as we are forming policies, we must also talk about channel of communication and channel of dissemination of this communication. And then policy getting to the grassroots, just as we said, we need to look at it again. What else? The security issues, they are critical. And I think we need to begin to think outside the box how we are going to do this. It's not only in Kaduna State. I know that sometimes ago, the herdsmen also came to my own farm in Oyo State, and they uprooted cassava and fed to their cattle. And they ate and left the rest for me. So how we are going to do the issue of the security, I think we need to think outside the box. I'm beginning to plant jatropha around some of my crops, because when they see jatropha plants, they don't come. But it depends on how big your farm is. That is when it is herdsmen and they want to protect their animals. But when it comes to AK-47, I think the government needs to do more about, say, the issue of insecurity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. The issue of security is one that must be fixed if we are going to. I'll move on to the representative of the Federal Ministry of Agri.
Thank you. Wonderful PIP presentations. From a policy perspective, I think that in as much as there are aspirations as to what can be achieved, those aspirations should also be grounded on some level of realism. Governments across different strata, the federal government, the state government, subnationals, do have pressing challenges. And so when they meet these policies, when these policies are developed, and so given the type of democracy we run, where people are entitled to second term, if you want to reserve 40% for women, for example, what can help in absorption is being able to convince policy implementers who are politicians that look at what the evidence of including more women in agricultural support can actually give you from a policy perspective. And then, of course, the examples, overall economic outlook. Norway is one country where it ranks very highly on the Human Development Index, and there's causative evidence to show that including more women, not just in agriculture and environmental policies, but in overall development actually helps. So I sum it up by saying that in this policy design and implementation advocacy work, greater focus should also be on the practical realities that the political office holders face and the opportunity costs they have to decide upon when they make these decisions. If that is understood from a design perspective, then yes, expectations may be lowered a bit, but we may have increased realistic outcomes.
Thank you very much, Dr. Emeka. And if I may, please hold on to your mic. I want to shift the conversation a little bit. We are very big on commitments, and we want to go out of this room with certain things that we can hold on to. And coming from the Federal Ministry of Agri and Food Security, having heard what you have heard in this room, what can you possibly commit to without putting...
I'm speaking on behalf of
Mrs. Anyanwu, yes.
What I can say is that given that some of the submissions are research based, she will try her possible best to see that it is reflected in any policies that you have going forward. And her office is always open, so I'm sure that if there are interactions, communications, and feedback that would help in the implementation, since that has been identified as the key challenge, she'll be happy to add her voice.
If we can do Oliver Twist, we would also like to be invited to relevant committee meetings so that we can make these presentations and then look for ways where we can actually fit into.
Definitely pass the message across.
We will follow you, sir. Thank you. And then, same to you, ma'am, from the Federal Ministry of Agriculture as well. We need a closing charge and a little bit of a commitment as to what we can do when we follow you to your office.
Okay, thank you, Aisha. And thank you to all the presenters. Just like I've said earlier on, it was very, very wonderful. Moving forward, just like I've said, our policies are always reviewed from time to time. And even our policy only at the federal level, we go to the subnationals as well. So in such situation, once you hear that there's a policy review at social place, you can easily contact us at the ministry and you'll be invited. When it comes to even the fish that has been done since 2008, so you know that one at any time there must be a review. And now there is another blue marine. They are no more with the Federal Ministry of Agriculture. We also have another sector which has to do with issue of livestock. So we are looking at another ministry that has to do with livestock. They are not with Ministry of Agriculture. And such situation, they will definitely have review of that policy document. So you can easily benefit and send in your proposal at that end. So it will be well captured and included. So let me just come in with some few points because there were some issues that were raised. Take, for example, the issue of the climate change aspect. I would love, Madam, to just come up with the issue of gender-friendly technology. Look at that aspect as well and include it in your submission. That will help a great deal in helping the women to adapt to the issue of climate change, which is one of my own areas. I told about the issue of flood. A lot of women face issue of this flooding, drought. So these things are really happening to them, and they are being segregated. They are being segregated. So it's good for us to look at that aspect. Things that are very friendly to gender, to make it easier for them to adapt to impact of climate change. And the issue of data, let me just be very brief so that
thank you.
The issue of data, yes, we will look at the fact that because the data, some are coming with diverse stories or whatever, and we'll not look at collecting data. Just like Madam said, collecting data is very expensive, but then we must still have to, collect it. When it comes to issue of distribution of inputs, you find out they give you their correct details because they know they are going to benefit something. So, but then we can easily get data. We need data. I'm even looking at, I'm also employing most of you with your project. Please come up with data, factual data. This will help to boost our data. It will help to boost our data bank. So please, we expect you that once we come up with your data, you can give us access to it. We need these things, and we'll be able to at least get accurate information and accurate planning.
Thank you.
Lastly, let me
go on.
Okay. Lastly, on the issue of insecurity, you can see even the Federal Ministry of Agriculture is even going beyond its mandate. We're looking at having agro-rangers. So, but we are also overstretched, just like the main security apparatus that we have in the country. They are also overstretched. How many agro-rangers can we use to guide farms across the nation? But we are just doing the little we can do, and we expect the security apparatus to complement us, but we are also doing the little we can do. I can carry AK-47 because I'm not trained in that field. You can imagine Federal Ministry of Agriculture going as far as employing people to be trained for them to carry those things and protect farms. So I think, thank you. Overall, we just look at all these things and we pray the whole thing will come out. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll just comment briefly on access to not credit but financial services, because women and even rural dwellers, they need more than credit. There are other things like insurance, deposits and other items. But the issue is that if we live here to get a proper understanding of how credit can be assessed, we would have been enough money, because everything comes down to money. Everything we have said now comes down to money. But you see, the thing is that there are two sources of getting money within the agri sector. It's either you get from government or you get from the commercial sources. Now the issue with government is that
it is limited because there are many interventions. And even when they come, they never get to the right people. You know, political expediency is always overrides those things that they are supposed to achieve. I can give examples. You know, you look at the Anchor Brewer program, look at what happened to it. Now, so the best source of getting finance is from commercial bank. But there is a dilemma.
Sir, they're saying it's too expensive, and I agree.
Can you let me laugh?
Yes, please.
There is a dilemma. You see, sitting here, you must wear the cap of a banker.
Yes.
Most of these bankers, they are based in Lagos. They don't have an understanding what goes on the field.
Now, when you go to a bank, the only answer he wants is, how do I get my money back? Now, for the women who want to get money, they are not bankable, because there are certain criteria that must be met before they can have access to the money. But you see, I worked with an organization called Roofing, Rural Finance Insurance Building Program, and we succeeded in getting money from commercial bank. But the issue is that when women come, and they don't come as a group, they make noise. But when they become a group, then they become a voice. I'll tell you something. I'm a banker. I will give money to a woman 100 times before I give to a man. Why? The repayment rate for women is extremely high.
We pay back.
I'll give you an example. There is a bank called Grameen Bank in Bangladesh. 97% are women. Repayment rate, 98%. Women customers, 9.7 million. So the challenge now is for women to come together as a group. Then you can now approach financial institutions, and then they can listen to you. Let me give you another example. There's this MSMEDA fund, which was established by the government of Goodluck Jonathan. It was a 220 billion naira fund. 60% was exclusively for women, which comes down to 132 billion. But there was no platform to dispense the money. Today, if I have 100 million, I say I want to give to women, how do I go about it? So the challenge is to establish platforms, because women have character. And when you are lending in an environment that you don't take other metrics into consideration, character is key. I'm not talking of reputation. Reputation is what people think about. Character is what you really are. Women have character and they will pay. But the challenge is that let us collaborate. Let us, even the Nigeria Agricultural Development Fund that is here now, we still ask the same questions. And it's better we have platforms that we can come together as a group, approach the banks, and then they can make the money available. I can assure you, if we do 1 or 2 pilots, banks will rush, because women have the highest repayment rate in the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that point, sir. There is power in the collective.
So, you know, we're in the other room before we came here, and I don't know, I think some of us were there, and one of the things they were talking about was what this gentleman was saying now about the money, the finance of it, and I picked something there. The lady there was saying, the women groups, we have, everybody here has somebody that saves somewhere, whether Adashi, Susu, church, they just have a group already. I think the issue is they don't know the power of the group they have or that they exist in already. So it comes down to back to information, feedback from the ground back up. It is not coming up. This money is there. I have heard so many funding in this room and the other room the whole week. PIC has tried. I have had so many access to funds. How do I get it? Who gets it? How do we get it to come to the people who need it the most? I think at the end of the day, most of you awardees or awards, I don't know what you call yourself, but you need to find a way to give feedback back. Both ways. You have been empowered with some knowledge now. You need to tell them. You need to come back and tell us. And I would like to assure everyone who sent a question to my principal, she will get these questions, and hopefully maybe the next time there's something, she'll probably address it herself. I'm going to speak about the people with disability. We had women in participation in politics. One of the issues we've had generally is that women don't want to participate. If we are not talking or we are not engaging, we cannot make the noise that we need. The lady with disability, we had one woman who came. I was trying to find, it was in July. It was women's political participation. And we had a lot of the Senate, the House of Reps that was on a wheelchair. Right there and there, they decided to make her part of their team. They've decided the House, the lower house, and I can assure you, with respect, are they doing something about it to a large extent? Are you feeling the impact? Maybe not. Because they too have bottlenecks. Like my madam, in the whole Senate, this 10th Assembly, they're just for women. You cannot even begin to understand the dynamics that they have to fight against every single time. The three of them are a bit, over 50. Senator Natasha is the only one that's a bit young and she's a bit vocal. But I can assure you, those women do not play. Now, one of the things the Senate has also done is try to include them in every committee. So there's always this sort of an inclusion and their voice is heard. It will happen, but we think you need to make, because it is working. Maybe not as fast as we all would wish. Everybody knows we have insecurity issues. Everybody. Even the child they gave birth to today will tell you there's insecurity issues. Is something being done? We up to the farm. We can't still, like the lady says, she's been displaced. Nobody cares. She's lost a husband. She's now a widow. Somebody that was living well has now, her whole status has changed. Do people care? Yes. Can they do something? Maybe not as fast as you would wish. But we keep these conversations going. We keep these dialogues and we keep analyzing, tweaking. We get very...
Thank you very much, Clara, who talked about climate smart. Thank you very much, Clara, who talked about climate smart. And people, in your work, make mention of climate smart varieties so that people will know that there are varieties adapted to their areas. And also to Mrs. Rashidat, you also was talking about post-harvest losses. And there is a lot that the NIFSPRI is doing. National Stored Products Research Institute. Professor Sonny is a very wonderful man. And there's a lot of value that can add to the work that you're doing. So I wanted to...
Thank you.
My brother there that was talking about bringing out his chest, you see, there is a lot of engagement that you need to do with people like him, the men folk. There was this speech by the current president who said that you don't stop at fighting for your rights. You should still go ahead to fight for the rights of others. So there are men like him, like myself, who would also want to come out and say, no, this is the right of the women. Please let us continue to engage with people like that so that, we can get this to where it's supposed to go to. We hear last week when we went for the flood early warning system meeting last week, Thursday, and somebody who is an ICT expert told me that sometimes when they engage a woman and then they call the woman will first of all need to give the phone to her husband. And then you now talk to the husband. You are a woman talking to a woman. But then that other woman will have to first of all give to the husband. Then the husband will ask, what do you want to tell her? And then he's the one now that decides whether she can talk to you or not. And sincerely, last week was the first time I heard that. I never knew that ever existed. So these are stories that people look for.
Thank you very much. And for rounding it up so nicely, storytelling is very important because we need to understand what is happening in other parts of the country. I did promise 2 hands, and only 2 hands, and then we finally close it.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I must say thank you to the fellows, very wonderful PIPs. For GAIN, Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, we are actually working in fact, most, if not all the areas that have been mentioned, post-harvest loss, access to finance, gender-based violence, adolescent. Most of our target groups are women, although women of reproductive age. We also work with children. What we do, because for GAIN we work in a couple of states. We partner with the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and the Federal Ministry of Budget and Economic Planning at the national and of course at the state level as regards policy. Because no matter what we do as organizations, I know a couple of us are working around supporting women. at the grassroots level, the community level, not so much can be achieved. Policies, but work in a couple of states. We could work with you to disseminate the information, inform the people at the grassroots. Because another way of getting things changed is advocacy. We will continue to work with policymakers, the impact that is needed.
Thank you for the hand of partnership. Thank you for the hand of partnership. Final comment.
Thank you, fellows, for the good work that you are doing. I commend you and I congratulate you. And I also look forward to being our beneficiaries. So we focus more on the, providing sensitization to the beneficiaries, not knowing that local governments and then harassment actually going on within the workplace. So it's something you may need to consider in your recommendation, you know. And then second, we needed women to have land. And then, of course, we know that women don't inherit land in some of those states. So some of them got land from their husbands. But for them to get permission to do what they had to do on that land, the husbands had to give them that permission. And in what particular community, the husband, they don't want their wives again to continue. Women have more voice in our communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And at this African Women in Agricultural Research and Development, we are a career development program, mostly targeting women in the agriculture research and development sector. So at this moment, I want to take the opportunity to thank, first of all, to thank our GRASP, Gender and Policy. So I saw the kind of work that they've done and where they have come from, and they really have put in a lot of work. So let's give them a clap, please. Thank you for your time. Security. Mrs. Osudia, lead collaborative seed program, seed sector platform, Abuja. Farm Patricia Oyaga, the representative of the Senate Committee, Chairman of Women Affairs. Mr. Adam Ibrahim, financial inclusion expert. Siambola Omichohin, and being able to sit through our presentation. Thank you for your time. We are so grateful for taking your time to join our side event and contributing actively for your feedback.
A big thank you to an amazing lady who is in this room, Mrs. Titi Lokbe Fakoya, a gender and inclusion advocate through and through and through. Please come forward so that we can have a picture. Thank you. So that we can have a picture, please, with the panelists. Pasha, 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 Choma. Something we learned in Nairobi. But, okay. Picture, please. Thank you. You can sit. Please stay behind. Please sit. Please sit so we can see. That's fine, right? Please sit. We can stay behind. Thank you. And before our panelists leave, we also want a family picture with everybody. Everybody, please. Thank you. No, you can sit. Okay, we have to move the chairs forward.
Yes, I will. Yes, she knows me. I think I'll see it. Yes. Look pretty.
Yes. 0905. Family picture, please. I'll do this. Family picture.
Shouldn't be lady at the back.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you very much. Ooh.